You open your phone for just a minute. No real plan. No urgency. And somehow, within seconds, you're already switching between apps, half reading something you don't care about, while your brain quietly feels like it's being pulled in 5 directions at once. But here's the strange part. It didn't always feel like this. There was a time when you could sit through a full video, lose yourself in a task, or even just be bored without immediately reaching for something else. So what actually changed? Because it didn't happen all at once. And it definitely didn't happen loudly. It happened in the background. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee. Most people think the problem is distraction. But that's not quite accurate. Because distraction is not the cause. It's the result of something much more systematic. Something designed to reshape how your attention behaves without you noticing. Here's a quick moment I want you to test something. Don't overthink it. How many times have you checked your phone today without a reason? Not a notification. Not a message. Just checking. If you felt that small pause just now, that hesitation before answering, that's exactly the point. Because your attention isn't being stolen all at once. It's being trained. Micro moment by micro moment. And this is where things get interesting. Because your brain didn't break. It adapted. Perfectly. To the environment it's in. Every app you use is competing for the same resource, your next second of attention. Not your hour. Not your day. Your next second. That's the real battleground. And in that kind of system, anything slow loses. So your brain starts optimizing. It learns that switching is safer than staying. That novelty is easier than depth. That constant input feels better than none at all. And without realizing it, you start to prefer fragments over focus. But here's the twist. Even now, your attention still works perfectly. You can still focus deeply. You can still think clearly. But only under certain conditions. Conditions that are becoming rarer. Let's slow this down for a second. Because something important is happening here. Not finishing. Not committing. Just moving. And over time, that pattern becomes your default setting. Not because you chose it, but because it was the easiest path available. Now look around your environment. Notifications. Autoplay. Infinite scroll. Content that never ends unless you force it to stop. Nothing in that system encourages completion. Everything encourages continuation. And that's where the shift becomes visible. It's not that focus disappeared. It's that focus stopped being rewarded. Let me show you what that looks like in real life. You sit down to do something important. Within minutes, there's a pull. Not a strong one. A subtle one. Just check this real quick. And you do. Not because you decided to, but because your brain has already learned the loop. Interrupt to reward, reset, repeat. And here's the part most people miss. The issue isn't the interruption itself. It's the recovery cost. Every switch doesn't just move your attention. It resets your momentum. And momentum is what deep thinking depends on. So now the question becomes, if your environment is constantly breaking momentum, how do you ever stay in it long enough to go deep? Before we go further, a quick moment. If this has ever happened to you where you sit down to focus and suddenly realize 30 minutes disappeared into nothing, drop a comment with reset. Just curious how common this actually is for you. Now let's go deeper. Because there's another layer underneath all of this. It's not just that content is fast. It's that your brain has started expecting speed. Slow information now feels like friction. Long explanations feel like effort. Even silence starts to feel uncomfortable. And this is where things get subtle. Because you don't notice the change as it happens. You only notice the side effects. You start rereading paragraphs, you lose track mid-task, you feel restless without stimulation. You switch tabs without realizing why, and then you assume something is wrong with your focus, but the system never gave your focus a chance to stabilize. That here's a mental image that explains it better. Imagine trying to grow a plant in a room where the lights turn on and off randomly every few seconds. Not enough time for it to settle. Not enough consistency for it to grow. That's what attention feels like right now for most people. But there's an interesting contradiction here. The same brain that struggles to focus for 10 minutes can still binge a 6-hour series. Or get lost in a game for an entire night. So focus isn't gone. It's selective. It activates when the environment supports it. Which leads to a more important question. What environments are you spending most of your time in? Because that answer explains almost everything. Let's shift for a moment. Because not all of this is negative. There's a hidden upside most people miss. The same brain adapting to fragmentation also becomes extremely fast at pattern recognition, quick decisions, rapid filtering, high-speed scanning of information. But the trade-off is depth. And depth is where most long-term thinking actually lives. So now we're at the real tension point of this entire video. You're not choosing between focus and distraction. You're navigating a system that constantly pushes you toward one side, and the only real control you have is what you repeatedly expose your attention to. So instead of asking, how do I fix my focus? A better question is, what is training my attention right now? Because whatever you repeat becomes your default. And here's where this gets practical without turning into advice overload. Pay attention to the first 5 minutes of your day, not in a dramatic way. Just notice what your brain reaches for first. That single pattern tells you more than most productivity systems ever will. And if you're still here watching this far in, there's a reason. Your attention didn't randomly decide to stay. Something in this pacing matched how you naturally process ideas. And that matters more than it seems, because it means focus isn't gone. It just needs the right kind of structure again. We're almost at the end, but I want to leave you with this. Nothing about your attention is accidental. Not the way it drifts, not the way it locks in, not the way it resists certain tasks. All of it is shaped, and anything shaped, if you want to push this further, hit subscribe. Not as a habit, but as a reminder that you're actively choosing what your attention gets exposed to next. Start noticing what keeps pulling you away when you didn't even mean to move, because that's where the real pattern is hiding.